Welcome, everyone. There we go. Fantastic. Everyone is joining us. Look at that. I love it. So good. It is amazing to see everyone here joining in. You have got your video on. We love having video on if possible so we can interact with you as well. You will notice you are on mute because we've got quite a few people here with us today. Honestly, we've got some amazing plans. So I think we're going to kick into it pretty soon. But before we start, I would love everyone here to share in the chat where you are, right? We are in the world and what you do creatively, right? Where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Amazing. And just while you're sharing that in the chat, if you don't know me, you'll notice that I have a funny accent. I am from New Zealand originally, but I'm actually based in the US now. Most of the people we work with are in the US, but often people sometimes who don't know me get on these calls or get on these trainings and go, "Where's that funny accent from?" So there you go. Some of you I know already, so I see some familiar faces too. Molly, do you want to briefly share where you are today?
Yeah, I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's a beautiful spring day here finally. And I'm a muralist and illustrator.
Amazing, fantastic. And Kathleen.
I'm based in Portland, Oregon. It's also a beautiful spring day, finally. And I'm an illustrator and designer.
Amazing. I love that. I'm actually in New Zealand at the moment, and it is not a nice day, unfortunately. It's quite rainy. And it's odd here because it's Friday here in New Zealand. It's actually Friday morning, which is like I'm in the future here. And then I go back to the States on Sunday. So it's been nice being here, visit some family for a little bit. We have so much planned, so I do want to make sure we get right underway. So what we're going to start off with is a few intros, and then we're diving into the workshop. So Molly, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself first.
Great. Yeah, I'm so excited to see everyone here. Thank you for coming, you guys. My name is Molly. I am located in Minneapolis, like I said. I'm a muralist and illustrator. So about 80% of my work is murals. And then I do illustration as well. So that can be anything from like support assets for branding to vinyl designs to different just like various needs for custom like web design, not web design, but illustration assets for like websites and whatnot. I met Logan about, gosh, 3 or 4 years ago. I actually met him through Kathleen, who's one of our other co-hosts today. Kathleen and I met at a creative conference. We had chatted about how I was just kind of looking for structure with my business. I was just feeling very lost being like a completely solopreneur, and I was really hoping to find guidance with like mentorship on the business side of things. And yeah, so that's how Logan and I met. I did the lifetime creative program with him and then the accelerator. And it's been awesome. I've been working for myself full time for 6 years now and continuing to grow and like shift my services to just keep building the lifestyle that I want and keep being able to like make the art that I want to be making, which has been awesome.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you so much, Molly. And over to you, Kathleen.
Hey. I'm Kathleen. An independent illustrator and graphic designer in Portland, like I mentioned before. Um, I was working in advertising for a really long time, and I met Logan through kind of a call, kind of like this one, actually. And I was kind of considering making freelance a bigger part of my life. I had like a couple small clients that I was doing on the side, but wasn't happy with my job. So I, got on a call with Logan, and I was really appreciated his kind of experience with the creative industry as a whole, and his outlook and approach to business. And I had like no business knowledge at the time, but within about 6 months of doing kind of the lifetime creative program and putting that stuff into action, I was able to kind of build my income from just like a couple $100s here to making consistent income for going on 4 years now. So that's kind of been my journey. And to introduce Logan a little bit, he works with creatives just like us, like all over the world, primarily in America now, he says, but he has a master's in entrepreneurship, and he was the owner of a creative business for 11 years. So he's been there, he's been where we are. He has that perspective, which is really nice. Um, he has worked with hundreds of designers, illustrators, and muralists, using kind of that knowledge and experience to help them build similarly successful creative careers. I know he's helped a lot of people, even that I know, including myself, quit their day jobs and build something real, sustainable, not just kind of getting by week to week. I think he's helped artists, including myself, kind of make five-figure months a regular occurrence and six-figure years like a typical reality. So I'm really excited to be here today with him and Molly to talk about one of the first things that Logan told me. I remember he helped me figure out what on earth I was even going to, what services I was even going to offer. So really excited to kind of talk through this one today, but I'll throw it to Logan to get us started.
Amazing. Thank you, Kathleen. And so great to be here. It's been a while since we've done one of these together. So it's so lovely to be able to do this and really run an amazing workshop, a really powerful one. This is just, as we said, a topic that I'm so passionate about is getting these offerings right. So we're going to dive into that and just add a few extra things there. The people we work with are all visual creatives. So it's very much, graphic designers, illustrators, muralists, surface designers, people very much. And that's basically, as Kathleen mentioned, most of our clients are in the US and Canada. We do have the odd client in Europe as well. No clients in New Zealand. The time zone's too hard because I don't spend that much time in New Zealand. So there we go. The thing that we're going to be diving into around offerings today is such a powerful one that we do really want you to get right. Something that we are offering as part of today's workshop is we're going to be giving away some freebie calls. We're going to give away 3 freebie coaching calls with myself, 3 individual coaching calls to 3 people, as well as a whole lot of other calls with Paul Corgan, who's the creative business specialist on my team, who actually help people. These are free calls, and this will actually help you to cement things from this workshop as well, from what you learn. This is something I would highly recommend putting your details down for. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop the link in the chat. All you have to do is fill in this form here. It's super straightforward, takes like 30 seconds, basically name, email, from there, and then we will go through and pick 3 people for those 30-minute freebies with me, and then a whole lot more to get on some calls with Paul as well. They are incredibly powerful calls. We love being able to offer these. This is something that we would love to do always more of, but these are something we can do on occasion. So honestly, check that out. It's going to be a really great way to get connected with us, but also to really digest some things from this workshop that we'll be able to help you through as well. So powerful. Okay, cool. Let's dive in because we've got lots we want to do. So crafting your unique offerings, right? So this is really a workshop all about making sure that the things that you do in your creative business are things that make sense and can actually work to grow it. As Kathleen said, when she was early stage, she was like, hey, I've got this dream and I want to grow my business. I want to get myself out there. I want to leave my day job. Well, her stage was making sure that actually her creative skills were used in the right way. Same with Molly, right? Molly was a bit further along when we started working with her, but it was really about going, okay, what to focus in on and also what to expand to. So I'm sure there's people here that are early stage, are trying to figure things out. Maybe you do have a day job and a dream, or there's probably some people here that are like, hey, I've been doing this for years already, but I want to expand what I'm offering, or I want to maybe niche down as well. So this is a powerful workshop for all of those things. Now, I get to have this really unique, interesting position of working with so many clients so that I get to see what works and also what doesn't work. Right. So we've seen over so many years the types of offerings that work and the type of offerings that are just not worth spending the time on. So this unique perspective is really interesting. This is what I'm going to be sharing today on this workshop as well. Essentially, if you have the wrong strategy, it doesn't matter how much you market yourself. Right? If you offer the wrong things in the wrong ways, you could spend all of the time, day and night, sending emails, cold emailing, marketing on Instagram, doing all of the work, and you'll feel like you're a failure. You'll feel like you're a fraud because you're struggling to make it work if you don't have the right types of offerings. Right now, you're all creative people here, right? I assume that's all why you're here. You're all creative people who are like, hey, I have these skills, I have this craft that I want to put out there. Often that is amazing, but it's challenging because it means you can do so many different things. Right? Both Kathleen and Molly, when I started speaking to them, they were like, hey, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, right? And that's very similar to most people we work with, right? There's a lot that you can do in the creative space, right? And we see this again and again. There's these people who are amazing at the creative stuff, but the struggle is really in the business side, and the start of that is actually narrowing down those offerings. the products, the services for you to sell and focus on, right? So you have to have this right. So we're going to go through some really powerful things here. And along the way, we're going to be getting both Molly and Kathleen to share some of their perspectives from their journey. Because this is, they're right out there in the trenches. They're doing this. They've been doing it for quite a few years now as well. And they have so many good things to share from that too. So the first thing we're going to take you through is identifying your ideal client, right? Because part of it is, yes, you've got to figure out what to offer, but you've also got to figure out who to offer it to. These things are kind of interesting because if you're not too sure about who to work with or what to do, well, you kind of need to figure out both, right? You need to figure out an audience and you need to figure out an offering. And it's something that I often say to our clients, which is it's kind of funny, but you could start with either. Some people are like, do I start figuring out the client first or do I start by figuring out the offering first? And I'm kind of like, well, it doesn't actually matter. You can start with either of those because you're going to go back and forth on figuring that out anyway. So a few tips around this. The first thing is to really acknowledge that if you try and work with everyone, you'll end up working with no one. Right? There's a saying marketing around that as well. If you try and market to everyone, then you'll market to no one. Right? The answer of, well, anyone could be a client. Well, the problem is that if you try and market to everyone, then people won't resonate with you. They'll read your messaging or see what you're up to on Instagram or read your emails, your website, and be like, oh, this is not for me, right? Because you're trying to go for like a generic big audience. I can do these amazing creative things. It's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't look like they do them for me, right? The ideal client. So that's really important to understand is that you may be open to working with anyone, and that's great. However, you need to get really narrow in terms of who that person would be for you or the organization would be for you, even if you could work with anyone. This is a really interesting thing and something a lot of people struggle with. Because they're like, hey, I'd love to chat. I'd love to chat with anyone. I'd love to work with anyone. Well, yes, but they need to really resonate with you. They need to see that you're the sort of person that they would want to work with as well. So the key here is really understanding that you need to find the people who need and value what you are going to be doing, what you're going to be offering. Right? So they have a need. They're like, I need this thing. I value this thing. And that's great. That's part of the equation. The other side of it is, are they then willing to pay? I'm sure there's people out there that need your amazing creative skills. Absolutely. Well, some of them won't be able to pay for it, right? Which is a pity, which is hard. But we also need to balance it with people that are willing to pay. And I'll say even further, willing to pay what you are worth, willing to pay what you want to charge. Right. And that's kind of the difference between a hobby and this being a business. Right. If you're just like, hey, people like my work and I can give it away or I can sell it really cheap. Well, yeah, that might be a hobby and that might be a really great hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're like, hey, like my dream here is to grow this business up. I want to leave my day job or I want to expand what I'm doing. I want to get a 10K month. Great. Then we need to start thinking beyond it just being a hobby. And that involves finding the people, yes, that value it and need it, but also they're willing to pay and willing to pay what you want. Right. So a few tips here around, who to actually work with. Well, if you have an existing business already, who are your favorite clients? Kind of an obvious one, right? Who do you really enjoy working with? Right? Could you multiply working with more of those types of people? If you're like, hey, like I've loved doing branding and design for restaurants, right? I have a really cool restaurant of this project, but absolutely loved it. Well, it could be a clue to maybe you could work with more restaurants, right? Or if you're like, hey, like I really enjoyed doing murals and co-working spaces, and you've only done one before, and you're like, wow, that was really incredible. That was really fun. It was a really great environment. That could be a really interesting area for you to test out. Is okay, could I connect with and build more around co-working spaces? Right, really, really important. The other thing you can really do when you're trying to figure out areas to expand into is really look at who other people are working with. Right, look around, go on Instagram and look at what other creatives are doing. Right, what are other people doing in their business in terms of who they're working with? And you can go to their website, they might have case studies and go, oh, okay, like what are the types of clients that people like me might have? It's often those clues that can really help. The other thing here to do is just a big brainstorm. Right? Like write down every single type of person you think you could potentially work with. there's a lot of different people out there, a lot of organizations out there, a lot of different niches to get into. Well, sometimes you just need some ideas, right? So starting by actually writing down, okay, who could I actually be working with? And also think about who you already have access to. What are the networks that you already are part of, right? If you're a parent, well, it could be interesting to work with other parents because you know that area. Or if you are into a specific type of sports, we've seen people go, hey, like I've got this hobby, I've got this sport here. I would love to be doing design, creating, making murals for these sorts of sports or these sorts of organizations, right? It's really those clues in your life as well. So, first of all, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around this, Molly, some of your experiences on this.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up so many good points that were super helpful when I was like just starting to work with you and trying to figure out like, well, where are these clients going to be? One of the most basic things for me was just be sure you're only showing and making the work that you want to be doing. When I started working with Logan, I was coming out of doing a lot of work in the wedding industry, and I was so burnt out on that. And for some people, that's great, but I was doing like all these tiny little signage pieces and like small restaurant pieces. And I realized that like I was kind of leaning into that because it was what I knew, but it wasn't necessarily where my favorite clients were coming from. And so really thinking about like, okay, well, maybe if I kind of parse back on what I'm like, I don't have to share every single project I do just because I got paid for it, right? Like I don't have to owe that advertisement to anyone. What really helped me was just starting to show whether it be like actual clients I worked with or even passion projects that I did, just showing projects that were the type of work that I wanted to be getting because otherwise like it's almost false advertising for yourself if you're showing work that you don't want to be doing anymore, you know? So kind of honing in on like again for me realizing I almost kind of realized first the kind of client I didn't want to be working with anymore, which for me was like bridal clients. Again, just for a multitude of reasons that wasn't the right fit for me. But just realizing like, okay, so if I don't want that kind of client, then what am I currently doing that I can like filter out to avoid getting more of those inquiries? Because even when I was responding to emails and saying like, no, I'm actually not doing that anymore, or like that's like whatever, that's not that doesn't fit my services that I'm currently offering, like that still takes it out of me even just to say no. So kind of reflecting on like what am I putting out there that I can kind of streamline to make it clear, like, this is what I want to offer. This is the kind of client I want. And then Logan brought up a really good point too about like look around at other people who are doing similar things and kind of see who their clients are and think about not necessarily like that you want that exact client, but if you see, you know, a muralist and you're like, oh, they've been doing a lot of like apartment buildings, and you can think like, okay, so kind of reverse engineer that. Like, what does that mean? Okay, who would they maybe work with or get in contact with that would get that? Maybe it's like a developer or a property management. And then you can apply that to like, how does that fit me locally in my immediate? Can I just Google like top Minneapolis, like real estate developers and just kind of like reverse engineering like what you see and making that bubble a little bit bigger of like who is the actual person that I would get in touch with to do that. So you can kind of you can get really specific and broad at the same time with like who exactly you want to be reaching out to. And then, I mean, I would just say the last thing on like as far as identifying your ideal client is just, and Logan talks about this all the time, which I constantly need the reminder as well, is just having the right mindset around it. Because especially when you're like, I mean, even now when I'm in slow seasons, it's so tempting to just be like, yes, I will work with anyone. And while it's true that like a dream client can come from anywhere, it doesn't mean that you should be projecting your services everywhere, right? Like you don't need to judge where someone's coming from if you get an inquiry, but just having the mindset of like, okay, hypothetically, let's say 6 months down the road, I will have four clients. So that part's established. I don't need to say I'll work with anyone. I already know in my brain, it's a fact. I'm gonna have four clients. What do those clients look like? And just getting over that first hurdle of like, feeling desperate because that's a very like I still have again slow seasons where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like really stressful right now. I'm just feel like I'm scrambling. Just trusting your gut, trusting your processes, trusting, you know, like mentors that you have, other artists that you've seen who are succeeding, and just trusting that there are seasons in business, and just it's really important to keep your mindset in the right place so that you don't start flailing. So having systems in place and things like that is one of the really big things that I was craving when I started working with Logan, and that was super helpful.
I love it. Like so many good things being shared here that just give everyone the realities of how the stuff actually works. Like, yeah, great to hear me talking about these things, but hearing from Molly and in a moment Kathleen about what's actually going on is so, so powerful too. Kathleen, we'd love to hear some of your thoughts around, your experiences around this part of it, around the client.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that have been shared already, I totally agree with. One thing that sort of, uh, I feel like I'll talk to other freelancers too, and this sort of comes up is like, well, what if you don't know who you want to work with? And I think, like Logan said, you can kind of go at it both ways. So if you have something that you want to do, say you want to paint large scale murals or whatever, you can kind of back into your ideal client by sort of figuring out like, okay, well, what problem does that solve and who has that problem? So when I was kind of starting out, I wanted to do illustration and I wanted to do kind of my style of like digital, colorful illustration. And I wanted to sort of build my style. And I was like, okay, who kind of has the budget for the larger scale illustration projects I want to do? Generally advertising, branding. So I was able to sort of like back into like, okay, art directors, creative directors in like, uh, advertising spaces or like brands. Um, because I was like, well, this is what I want to do. Who needs that? So I think thinking a little bit, if you're having trouble being like, oh, like I don't know, like who I want to work with, I have these skills, this is what I would really like to do. Uh, you can kind of work backwards almost and be like, okay, I've got this skill. How can I figure out who needs that? And it might be a little research. It might be looking at what other artists are doing. I have a folder on Instagram that I just save whenever someone like does a project I think is cool. I'll just save it to like a folder on Instagram so I could be like, if I'm feeling a little bit stuck of like, who to do outreach to or need some fresh ideas, I can look and be like, okay, well, my skills would fit into something like that as well. So I found that that was kind of a really helpful way if you have an idea of what you like to do, but you're not sure who would need that. Um, that's kind of a way to kind of go that way. Also, I know Logan said kind of like, what clients have you liked working with in the past? Even like when I was starting out, I was working in advertising. So when I was first starting out, I was able to kind of leverage the knowledge I had about that industry. So even if you're coming out of a different industry, if you have knowledge that you feel like I can solve a problem for these people with my own business, that can be a good way to go about it too. I know people who have come out of things like even like the wedding industry or like the food industry, and they're like, I have these connections in place already, and I have a skill that I can use to kind of help this specific demographic. That can be another way to come at it too, if you're kind of trying to transition from another industry into your own business. So yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Kathleen. So, so powerful. And what we're going to do next is just get a few more people connecting that are on here on the call with us today, because I even just saw there, as a sharing, hey, is there anyone in Portland, right? Connecting with other people is such an important part of it. I'd love everyone to go and get their Instagram and just drop it in the chat, right? Get the URL, like literally open a browser, grab the URL. Um, Kathleen and Molly will share this as well. So let's say from my team, going to share our Flambo Entrepreneur one. If we're not connected, just drop, if everyone here can drop their link, we would love to get connected with you. But also, we'd love you to get connected with each other, because building that creative community is such an important part of it. So just go and get yours, pop it in the chat, drop it in there. Amazing. Thank you, Brescia. People are starting to pop them in already, and then go through and like click everyone's link and like follow them, get connected. We would love to make sure we're connected with you as well. So we'll go through and follow other people as well. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, all flowing through the chat there as well. I love it. Okay, so there will be some people watching the recording, so I'm going to keep on keeping on. But those of you who are here live, make sure you go through that chat and get everyone's links, get them all open, see all the awesome things people are up to. Look, I think most people here are actually in the US, but I know from the chat earlier, there's also someone in France, there's some other people in Europe, UK, Canada as well, which is absolutely fantastic, and even a few other spots too, which is great. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to share a little bit more around how to actually look at your revenue streams, right? So when I say revenue streams, we can talk about revenue streams, or we can talk about like offerings. It's kind of in a way one and the same thing. It's like what you do. We've talked a little bit about who you can do things for, the ideal client, but now we're going to actually talk about those offerings, those services, right? The revenue streams, how you generate your revenue. So one big thing here that we really see is that people often try and do too much, right? Whether we're working with someone who's really early stage or someone who's been in business for years and years and left their day job years ago, like we'll often work with people at that stage too. Well, we often see a trend where people are trying to just do everything, right? They're trying to be everything to everyone as well, right? And it's kind of scary to niche down, but it's a really important part of it. So one of the big things we really recommend is actually focusing on usually around 3 to 5 offerings or areas of offering, right? 3 to 5, not 10, right? Not 8, like 3 to 5. And some people say, well, is it the 3 or is it the 5? Well, it'll depend. It'll depend on your capacity. If you are starting out or you're still in a day job, it's probably not going to make sense to focus on 5 different areas. It's probably going to be much narrower, more like 2 or 3. But usually we recommend around 3 to 5. There is a reason I don't say one. Some people out there believe, no, you focus on just one thing, just one offering. I'm not a big believer in that, mainly because I think creative people get bored with that, right? See people nodding here. Kathleen and Molly are definitely nodding as well. And like, it's like, okay, yeah, you could just do one thing. That one thing could be, hey, I'm going to just do murals. And that'll be quite engaging for quite a while. But actually, after a while, you'll be like, I want to do some other things as well. So our recommendation is often have some other pieces to what you do as well. Look, depending on what you do, it could be expanding within this area. So it could be, yes, you could look at different types of murals to expand it. That's another way to think about it, rather than doing murals and then doing boss illustrations. Right? You could also just expand within murals. So we're going to sort of talk about this a little bit more because it's a pretty interesting subject. One of the big things that we see all the time is that people spend a lot of time and energy on lower priced offerings. Right now, I've got nothing against lower priced offerings. We could be doing things like stickers, prints. We could have an Etsy store selling things for $2, $50, $100, right? Print on demand often falls into the space. Licensing kind of often falls into this space kind of as well. The thing though is that we notice again and again is that those are not the things that are helping you to get long-term sustainable income, helping you to leave your day job, helping you to actually work sustainably. Right. So what we've seen again and again and again, and we've worked with a lot of people, is that it's so important to have things that you offer that are at a higher price point. We've actually found a good number around this. It's $300 plus, right? $300 US plus, and that's minimum, by the way, right? You want to have stuff higher price than that as well. Now, if you're doing per hour value work, well, first thing is try and do project prices rather than per hour, but that's fine as well. It's just maybe the number of hours adds up to, well over $300. $500 better. $1,000 much better. $5,000 fantastic, right? So it's really important to note that those are the sorts of things that are going to actually grow you sustainably. I'm not saying you can't do those other things. I would just minimize the amount of time you're spending on them. Right. So yeah, if you're excited about having an Etsy store and selling prints or having small design stickers, right? The print on demand, these areas, like that's totally fine. Just minimize it. Like 20% of your time could be on those things. We've just seen again and again, it's really hard to build a sustainable business without focusing on some of the bigger ticket stuff. Now, as I said, you can always just narrow down what you do in terms of the other things, but just understand it's probably not going to be there. We hear it again and again. People saying, oh, yeah, but I just love the idea of passive income. This is not a workshop about what Logan thinks about the word passive income, but I will say that I do find the word passive income kind of frustrating because I don't think passive income, A, that passive, or it's actually really hard to get working sustainably. Right. So I'm not going to have too many rants on about that, but it's important that you do make sure that you have these higher ticket offerings as well. And this is hard to hear from people. Some people are like, no, 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 but like print on demand, I'm going to really make that work. And I'm like, arguably, I think the days of print on demand are kind of over, right? It's getting a lot harder to make that work. Even if you can make it work, you have to sell so much again and again and again every single month to get sustainable income that's regular, right? Really, really important. If you really feel passionate about it, yeah, spend 10 to 20% of your energy on it, but make sure you're doing these higher ticket offerings as well. This is really, really important. And as you grow your business, yeah, you might find you can expand further, right? So early on, I mentioned maybe you have 3 offerings you focus on when you're trying to leave your day job. Hey, once you've got out of your day job, you can expand, you can do more, you can test, you can experiment. You might be like, well, I know that maybe print on demand, maybe stickers, maybe an instant store didn't help me to leave my day job. But once I'm out of my day job and I've got more time, I can now focus some time and energy on that. And because it's really interesting, a lot of fun, and I'd love to have my creative work out there for more people and more available for more people. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Just knowing that you're still probably going to have your bread and butter offering, right? The things that you offer again and again and again are probably going to be things that you're charging $500, $1,500, $5,000 for, right? Really, really important. If you're a muralist, you can charge even more, right? We had a client late last year who charged over $100,000 for a project. And I will say a project, well, it was quite a lot of murals, but you're right, that's powerful stuff, right? And you had to have a team to help them as well. But, there is amazing opportunities in so many of these spaces. So I would love to get Kathleen maybe sharing a few things around the revenue stream side, the kind of the offering side there.
Yeah, I mean, that was something when I was starting out that I kind of had to wrap my head around that one, I couldn't do literally everything, but I couldn't just do one thing. There's like a happy medium, like I came in and I was like, I can do photo retouching, I can do art direction, I can do murals, I can do, and I kind of figured out those few things that I wanted to focus on in the beginning. And another thing is that those things can change. Like I started out doing murals as one of kind of my major things, and I did a bunch of them. And then I, decided I wanted my business to be more mobile. I wanted to move. So I sort of shifted. You don't have to commit forever to, certain offerings. Things change, your business changes. But choosing, yeah, like Logan said, like 2 to 3, really helpful. I often say too, I think the conversation around like kind of those small things, and I think a lot of people start like, I want to open a sticker shop or a print shop, because those are fun things to do. And I also like to do those things. But I sort of have this thing that I'll tell people, is that I like have my big clients to subsidize like the small projects I want to do. So I have, like I mentioned, I'm an illustrator and designer, and I work sort of in the same industry. So I work primarily in advertising and brand, and marketing. But I will do sort of the illustration and the design side of that. So that's sort of how I've diversified, is like there are going to be seasons where illustration work is slow and I'm able to sort of pick up more of the design work. And I found that the biggest thing about diversifying is I think it's kind of the key to making it sustainable. A lot of people ask me like, how do you have such like consistency? And like, you're like, my business isn't like this huge roller coaster. Obviously there's small dips and valleys, but I think one of the biggest things that's kind of protected me from having like really dramatic highs and lows is just kind of having those different sources. So like I have month to month design clients that can get me through when, all my illustration projects happen in 1 month and then there's no, leads for a couple months. And I'm kind of focusing on outreach. So that's been really helpful for me. I think I can kind of give an example right now of my like kind of revenue streams where I have kind of my regular monthly design clients. I have kind of big one-off projects where, I charge a project rate. It's usually an illustration project, or some kind of like packaging design project. And then I also have been doing more personal commission work, which is, again, kind of that smaller ticket item. But it's something that I'm able to do kind of as something I enjoy doing and people are willing to pay for, but I'm not feeling like it needs to be the bulk of my income. And then I know there's kind of other things I've done in the past. I've done murals in the past. In the past, I've done like branding work, but I've since moved away from that. So having kind of the diversity also helps me transition really easily because I can kind of drop one area that's I'm not passionate about or I don't feel like I'm making enough money in to like make it worth it and transition to something else without like shutting down my business entirely. So I think it just diversifying gives a lot of flexibility and adaptability, especially, as, the people's need for things changes, being able to kind of have those different areas to lean on, has been really helpful for me. And it's kind of been the key to keeping things consistent. And I know when I was starting out, I was so lost about where to go. And Logan was like, let's take a step back, let's identify, what your skills are. And sometimes it's just sitting down, writing out everything you can do and, kind of figuring that out. But yeah, it's been a huge thing, kind of like the huge, I guess, like driver of kind of how I've run my business. So.
I love how Kathleen talked about, the transitions within these things as well. Like, I think that's a really important thing to recognize is like the thing that you focus on right now or in this next stage, whether that you're more developed or you're further along, you're trying to leave or you're trying to leave your day job, like this thing that you're offering may transition and change. Right. I know for you, Kathleen, like getting out of your day job, there was a different set of focuses because you're like, great, like I need to bring in sustainable income as soon as possible. A lot of it was, yes, maybe focusing on some of those easier wins for you, things you had a lot more experience in. A lot of it was more of the graphic design, the branding type work. But then once you were out, you started to go, okay, I want to do more other things and expand that as well. Right. So I think that's a really important piece of it too. We will answer some questions as we get deeper into if we have time as well. But I did want to address just one question here at the moment in the chat, which is around do you guys recommend start building your largest revenue stream first when you're looking to leave your day job? Or do you do those smaller things like the print on demand and licensing? Well, I think my point here is more that the print on demand and licensing is not going to be the thing that's going to get you to actually leave the day job. Right. So if you just focus on those things next to the day job, you're not going to be able to leave. Right. You're going to be stuck doing that for a very long time. So, I'm not saying you can't do those things. It's more going the thing that I would recommend focusing on is going to be those larger revenue streams. Right. So for you, you might go, okay, great. I'm going to do mostly the large revenue stream, a little bit of time on print on demand and licensing because I like it. Sure, that's totally fine. But you may find, well, I don't really have lots of time. I can only do one of these or two of these. Well, focus on the thing that's going to get you to leave the day job. Right. So that's kind of my views around that one there. We're going to talk more. We want to bring a little bit of marketing into this workshop today as well, right? Because obviously, yes, great. We've been talking about offerings. We're going to dive in more about that and their unique offerings. But we also need to really recognize here that one of the biggest problems in business is that not enough people know you exist. Right. So even once you've got more clarity around what those offerings are, you now need to really figure out, okay, well, how am I going to get these things out here? You may be really good at these things. Fantastic. That's great. What a lot of people do is they go, well, I think I'm really good at these things. And maybe you put it on a website or maybe you share occasionally on Instagram, but that's kind of it. And you kind of wait and you're like, right, where are the people? Well, we need to make sure that we actually do the marketing thing. And part of that is, making sure you've got a good online presence. Right. So this is ultimately about marketing yourself. And as Molly shared, it's about what you want to be doing. Right. Not about what you can do or what you've done and going, okay, what do I want to do from here? Those are the sorts of things that you want to showcase, to offer, to talk about online, to put on Instagram, to have on the website, to be connecting with people as well. So part of that journey of growing a creative business, it is a marketing journey, right? As much as we kind of hate that word marketing, it's just really about connecting and sharing. That's all that marketing really, really is, right? We've got to do that piece as well. If I could tell you how many times people said to me, oh, but I just love the creative stuff. Can I just do that? And I'm like, yeah, you can. It's called a hobby, right? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you're like, hey, no, I really want to build this business. I want to grow. I want to earn 10K months. I want to do this sustainably. I want the flexibility, the freedom, the creativity that it still offers. Well, we've got to do the business stuff too. You don't have to be an expert, but there will be things you'll need to learn about and get set up and get moving on. Just like Molly and Kathleen have done to have sustainable businesses. They had to learn and they had to take action around these sides. So, we wanted to just briefly talk about some of that marketing side. Once you've got more clarity around the thing that you're offering and you've got more clarity around the who, well, we've got to make sure those who are aware that you exist. So a really great way to do this is to just share examples of the things that you want to do, right? So share examples of the type of work that you want to attract. Now, there's lots of ways to do this. If you have past clients, you can be sharing that work, right? Here's this project I did, showcasing that work. Fantastic. Also, if you don't have clients yet, you could actually do things like passion project, personal projects, and showcase them. So it's showcasing how you could use your creative skills in this thing here. Right. So it could be doing mock-ups, for example. you could go, hey, well, I'd love to get more into packaging design, but I don't really have any examples of packaging design clients because I'm early stage. Well, you can do mock-ups, right? So you can actually mock up, here's what my design would look like on this sort of product. Right. So mock-ups are a great way to showcase. The other thing here is that really understanding that building presence online and marketing is also about building trust with your audience. Know, like, and trust. How do we build trust? Well, we put you out there. You are the creator. I see this occasionally where we go to someone's website and there's nothing about them. Right? It's kind of faceless there. They're kind of hidden behind it. It's this design business. And then you're like, wow, this is really cool. But like, who is this? Right now, actually building trust is so important. Most people, most organizations want to work with the designer. They don't want to work with the brand. They want to work with the individual person. So you showing up as well is really important. Building trust through showing up, yes, on your about page and on your Instagram, right? Using things like LinkedIn, right? Showing that you're a real person, because if people are going to spend money with you, they need to build trust. It's a lot easier to build trust with a person, a real person, than an unknown faceless brand, particularly in this space here. Really, really important. Molly, we'd love to hear some of your sort of thoughts and experiences around kind of this trust side and the more of that marketing side as well.
Yeah, I think just what you're saying about trust is such a huge part of it. One big thing in that, like along the lines of like building trust with clients for me was having systems in place for when I did connect with that client. Because I wanted to establish trust and professionalism right away, even if it's as simple as having like a canned email response that you can like get back to someone right away when they send you an inquiry that just says like thank you so much for reaching out, like these are the things I'm hearing you want to talk about, I'll be back to you in this amount of time. So just again like thinking of ways that you can build that trust once you do connect with a client is huge. And Logan has so much insight on how to build those systems, which is super helpful. um Again, like we've been saying, just making sure that you're putting out the work that you want to be getting. Um, Building trust, first impressions. Also, a super simple, like tangible thing is having testimonials on your website, like past clients that you've, or having testimonials on your Instagram highlight, or anywhere that you can put it. Having clients you've worked with share your work, whether that's like offering an incentive to them or a referral fee, but like the proof is in the pudding. If there are people that have worked with you, I mean, we've all looked at Yelp reviews, we've all looked at like different movie ratings. Like it's essentially a rating for your business and your services. So that is a great way to build trust too, is just having testimonials. And when you're in the early stages, like trying to be building up your business, building up your portfolio, Logan touched on this too, but like have a passion project, or if you have the capacity to volunteer or assist on something, like find an artist that is doing similar work that you could maybe like offer a few hours of assistance with. And then having those, like having other people in your field kind of vouch for you too. Like I know I worked with some muralists when I was first getting started, and having someone who's like a has a much bigger following than me and has a huge like client list share that they worked with me, like that was trust building too, to show like, oh, this person has the skills, they're trusted by this other person who's a leader in the industry. So yeah, if you have the capacity to like volunteer or donate any of your time to build up your portfolio, and then the second part of that, getting like the testimonials then of the people who worked with you or who benefited from your work, I think that's really huge.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you, Molly. We're going to talk a little bit more about the idea of kind of your offerings and niching down. And first of all, I want to acknowledge that it's kind of scary doing that, right? Like the idea of being like, hey, I'm going to like narrow down, honestly, both on the target market, the ideal client side, as well as the actual thing. If you're like, hey, okay, well, I'm going to focus on murals and branding, right? And I'm going to also be doing a little bit of packaging design. Well, it can actually be pretty scary focusing down on these things. I will note that it's not saying that you won't do other work if opportunities come to you. You get to choose. This is your business. Right? We get that all the time, saying, well, but what if someone contacts me saying, can I do a logo? And that's not something I'm promoting. Well, you still get to decide whether you do that or not. You might say, no, I don't do them anymore. Right, fantastic. Or you might say, yep, I do them occasionally, and you can do that. But you're not probably going to be promoting it on your website or talking about it on Instagram if it's something you don't want to keep attracting. Right. So this is the beautiful thing here, is you still get to choose when projects come to you, inquiries come to you. You get to say yes, you get to say no, right? But when we're putting our presence out there and we're connecting with the people and connecting with people, showing here's the work we want to do, we're getting really, really specific. As I said, it's pretty scary. It's an experimental phase though, right? So when you are launching a new offering, whether you've been in business for a long time or you're early stage, well, there's an experimental phase. You might be like, well, I don't know, like packaging design sounds really interesting. Yep, I think I can do it. I don't know if I'm going to like it. Well, the only way to really find out is to offer it, give it a go, and learn from that process. Same with murals, right? You could try getting into something. Well, how you try it is you do it. You get out there, you get some clients, and you get the experience and go, maybe after 6 months, you go, you know what? Not really my thing. And that's actually okay, right? You've figured out some things, you've learned some things, and you've had a great thing to focus on and learn about. And you'll take those learnings to the next thing that you focus on. Nothing is wasted in the space here. So, part of it is, yes, narrowing things down. Sometimes early on, you might be like, well, I'm going to go, hey, I'm going to try these different things and maybe try 2 or 3 things. And then after a few months, you go, okay, great. Well, I really like these two. Don't like that one. I'm going to try this other thing here instead of that third thing there. So there is a bit of an experimental phase, but narrowing down is an important thing. And I think kind of a fun analogy that I love to give is like when we go to a restaurant, we don't just go to the restaurant that does absolutely anything and everything. Right? We think, okay, what do I want to eat tonight? Okay, oh well, maybe I would love to go and eat some Japanese food, right? We're getting really specific. Or last night I was in an amazing Indian place here in New Zealand. Like, oh, okay, great. That's what I felt like. I was like, I'm going to go there. We don't go to restaurants as being like, great, anything's possible. And when, the person comes to us and says, well, what do you want? We go, well, what have you got? And they go, we can do anything. We go, oh yeah, what's the anything? Have you got a menu? Right? Because actually people need things to select from. Right? We need that menu. So that's where having those clear offerings are really, really important as well. So important. Kathleen, would love to hear some of your sort of perspectives around this niching down part as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that kind of helped change my perspective around like niching down was like, I think early on, I think me and Logan talked about like kind of your elevator pitch for your business, and sort of how you communicate with potential customers. And imagine trying to, with the limited time you might have in someone's email or, in front of you, trying to say, well, I'm an illustrator, I do kids books, I do, and then like list off everything you would do, and then be like, oh, I also design websites and brands, and like just like you can't, someone would get very confused, or they would be like, there's no way this person does all of these things well. Even if you by some kind of magic are an expert in all those things, it's kind of a communication tool to figure out, again, who your ideal client is, what are they looking for, and how can I sort of model my business to show that I'm the best person for those jobs. And like you said, I do things outside of sort of what I call myself all the time. Like I don't do branding anymore, but a good friend wants like a logo for their therapy business and it sounds fun and we align and I'm like, sure. But I'm not advertising that actively. Like the only things that I focus on in my portfolio are illustration and design. So, and those are the only kinds of people that I'm reaching out to. And, when at first it was kind of difficult, but then it starts to feel good when you start to shed like things that, when I start to be like, I'm not making websites anymore. And you realize like, I never really enjoyed making websites. I just liked that, people like to pay for that, that it's something that a lot of people ask for. And like, it can be hard to let go of something that seems like, oh, that could be really lucrative. But if it doesn't align with your values as a business or the ideal clients and work you want to do, then it's not helping your business. It's probably just muddying the waters, taking up time that you would otherwise spend. I mean, the amount of time that I spend building my like illustration skills, I mean, if I was trying to put that much personal development into web design, branding, and all of that too, and keeping up with all of that, like my skills wouldn't be able to keep up, and I wouldn't be able to give the proper time to all of those things. So it was helpful for me to just identify what I was really passionate about and what would make me, the most money for the, type of things that I want to do, and to just let other things go, even though it can kind of hurt to be like, I have all these skills, I want to use them all. that was something that, especially coming out of advertising where you're expected to do literally everything. Like they expect you on a salary job to do. It was kind of nice to be like, well, I don't have to do stop motion animation anymore. I don't have to do, photography. I don't have to do all this. So I kind of it can be difficult, but it can also be really freeing and give you a lot of kind of like power and time and energy to focus on what, really matters and what's going to really build something that you enjoy and that also is sustainable as far as income. So
I love it. I think, this idea of like doing the things that bring you joy, doing the things that you're excited to do is such a powerful part of why people start and run their own businesses. Right? People get to a point where they're like, I'm sick of just having a boss being like, yeah, you have to do this thing here. And that's just what you're doing today. And you're like, well, I'm not really excited about working with this type of client or doing this sort of thing. Right. One of the beautiful things about having your own business is you get to really direct things towards the things that you really want to do. Of course, early on, yeah, you might be doing a bit more of stuff that you're not as excited about. And that's okay. Often it's going, great. What's going to get me the time, the freedom, get me out of that day job to really focus on these things? What's going to get me the stable income? As you then expand what you do into the things that you are more excited about over time as well. So powerful. And we've still got a couple more things we do want to cover, but I just want to remind everyone here that's live or on the recording, um, drop this, check out the link I'm just sharing, pop that open. That is for one of those freebie calls. So click that link. We'll be offering a bunch of freebie calls to some people that fill that out. I've noticed some people have already filled it out, which is awesome. So if you've done it, fantastic. Takes about 20 seconds. It's like name, email. I think there's a couple of other questions there. Fill that out, and then we'll go through and we'll get 3 one-on-one calls with me, and then a whole bunch more with Paul from my team to really help you to connect a bit about what you've learned, and really help you to see, what's getting in your way of growing your business, but so, exploring some of those dreams of what's possible as well. So definitely, I would love every single person who's here live or watching the recording, click that link, make sure that you have filled that in. We love being able to really dive into things after the workshop as well. Okay, what I briefly do want to share and talk about is really this thing around adapting to market trends and opportunities, right? So the truth is that over time things are going to evolve and change. And we see this again and again where people just do the same thing for a very long time. And we've worked with existing business owners who have been doing things for a whole number of years, and then they've come to us going like, hey, it's not really working anymore. And we've seen what's happened is that they haven't really evolved and learned along the way. They've just kind of done the same thing, the same types of offerings with the same types of clients. Sometimes they've just had one or several clients that they've worked with for years, and then they've lost those clients. Like, I no longer have a business. Help. I don't even know how to market. It's so important to understand that part of this journey is going to be ongoing learning, ongoing evolution, right? And that might mean that the types of offerings that you have over time evolve. Now, I'm not saying they should evolve every 3 months or 6 months, but what I'm saying is what you're doing right now may evolve and change. And in 2 years' time, it might be in a new area that you're interested in getting into, both because of market trends and interests, but also it could be your own interests evolve and change as well. I think, Molly, you're a great example of this, where you went from doing a lot in the wedding industry. And you went, hey, actually, you know what? I want to really get into murals as a big area of opportunity that I'm excited about. And that was an evolution and a change. Right? It's not to say there's not still opportunities in the wedding industry. That was you. But also at the same time, some offerings can change in terms of areas of opportunity. I was not saying the same thing about print on demand 4 or 5 years ago. It was a very different place. However, it's just got so competitive, right? Licensing, there's still areas of opportunity in licensing, but it's getting more and more competitive by the day, and it is getting harder. So this is where we've got to make sure as we go, we are evolving, we're learning, we are upgrading our skills. Yes, in the marketing stuff, because social media evolves, ways to market evolve, but also in terms of what you're offering and who you're offering it to as well, both in terms of the market as well as in terms of the types of things that you're excited about as well. Molly, we'd love to hear some of your sort of brief thoughts around this, in terms of how things can evolve and keep growing and learning as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you had mentioned earlier that you can even like kind of transition within your core offering still. So like murals are my bread and butter. That's what I do. But most of what I was doing for murals, a few years ago or like 4 years ago was more commercial spaces, like co-working, things like that. And then, the pandemic hit, and I saw that in like 2021, I was starting to get a lot more inquiries for residential murals because so many more people were working from home. They were spending so many more hours in like a home office that they really wanted to make their own. So recognizing that that was a trend was a way that I started leaning into. Like I hadn't really leaned into offering residential murals prior to that. And so I started to kind of see that as an opportunity of, like actually there's probably a lot more people who are going to be working remotely now. And that's a window that I never thought to advertise to before. So just kind of being aware of like different trends in that way that are happening is good. There's also such a seasonality to stuff. I mean, we've talked a lot about like um, not wanting to offer everything, but even within the things that you have decided that you offer, or like the marketing that you have decided or found out works for you, you don't necessarily have to do those things all at the same time. So, like, my job has a lot of seasonality with when I start to get inquiries and when I actually paint. So, again, I'm in Minnesota. There's like literal seasons that I can do exterior painting in, but even though I paint a lot of interior murals too, I've just noticed that I really get more of my actual painting in like summer and fall. So I've kind of transitioned to just, I know that that's how my clients tend to work. So January, February, March, I've kind of transitioned to being more strategy for me to do like back end work. I redo my website. I make sure everything is updated with like all my projects and whatnot. And just kind of learning trends like throughout the year that sh changed too. I invest in like doing some classes and continuing ed for myself at that time. Because for me, I've just learned that a lot of like businesses in particular, it kind of seems like they just want to get through, at least in the US, it's called first quarter of taxes and budgeting. They kind of just need to get through that time before they realize, like, oh, I actually do have a $15,000 surplus I can use to pay for a mural. Because when people are just getting back to the office after the holidays, that's just not where their headspace is at. So I've just learned like adapting where I'm putting my energy in my business. Sometimes things work great, literally just at different times of the year, which is just important to be aware of. And then just one last little thing, kind of circling back to something Kathleen said about like asking yourself what problem you're solving for your clients. I think that's a really, and Logan talks about this a lot too, like thinking about what the problem is and like how you're going to be helping someone and serving someone with your offerings, because your clients' problems are going to change too. So sometimes just as simple as like adapting the language that you're using, like maybe you're literally offering the same thing, but you're presenting it as like, this can also help you in this way. So for example, like, I don't know if you're I don't know if you're an illustrator and you're doing product design, it could be as simple as like, well, yeah, in the fall, you're not going to be advertising like your Easter designs. Like you're going to advertise like Halloween, back to school. So just kind of being aware of like, what is the language I can be using that is getting really specific to my dream client, that's like adapting to what their current needs are and not 6 months ago, not a year ago.
Ah, I love it. So, so powerful. I just, one of the things I love about this workshop here is getting to hear from Kathleen and Molly, like they are deep in it, right? They're deep in it. So sharing these real experiences that happen, right? Which is incredibly powerful as well. Our time has flown by. It always does. I know we have covered so much information here. We've just like been pouring ideas and information to everyone's brains here, whether you're on the recording or live. So definitely make sure you've booked, you've filled in that form so we can hopefully get as many of you as possible on some of those freebie calls, some with me, some with Paul. Isa, your question there, a great one. Definitely bring that up. I see that you've filled in the form, so hopefully we can get you on one of those calls. And definitely bring that along to that call as well, because I think it's a great question and there's a lot of complexity to it that it will just depend on your situation there. What I would love everyone here to do is to pop in the chat what you learned today, a takeaway, something you've heard, something you found powerful, something one of us said that you found really interesting. Just pop that in the chat, and I'm just going to read through a few of them, but would love to hear, kind of some of the things that people are now thinking about from this. Maybe there's an action, there's an outcome. Honestly, we've covered a ton of things. So really looking forward to hopefully connecting with a bunch of you via that link. So make sure you do fill that in, get it filled in. We'll be letting people know in the next couple of days who we picked for the freebie calls with myself as well as with Paul as well. And, once again, we've damned information here. There's obviously a lot to grow and learn in the space, whether you're early stage or further along. But a big message is that, you do need to get really specific around your offerings and you need to get the stuff right. Right? Getting it wrong actually means that you can put all this time and energy into a business, years and years and years, and it's not working. And you're going to feel like a failure. You're like, maybe my creative work's not that good. It's not that. We have to get the design of the business, what you're offering, who you're offering it to. We've got to get that right. And then obviously we're going to make sure that people know that you exist, right? That people know you exist. It's such an important part of it as well. Just sharing a few of the things popping up in the chat here as we start to wrap up today's workshop. Jane sharing, being affirmed to focus on what work is most important to me and focus on who I want to work with, as opposed to trying to do everything. I love that, Jane. Absolutely powerful. Karine sharing, be specific in your offerings, know who you want to work with, and know what you're most passionate about to offer. Pursue those passion projects. Yes, absolutely. Aaron, I need to zero in on my ideal club, right? This can take time, this can take experimentation. That's totally okay. Tracy sharing, when Molly said residential murals, the ideas started flowing with how to adapt the skills to another area. Oh, I love that. I love the ideas that can really come out of a workshop like this. Alex, reverse engineering the client from other people's clients and asking what I want to do, is that solve a problem for? Yeah, that's like such an important thing, is get some ideas. Go see what other people are doing. Because if other people are doing it, it probably means there's opportunities. Right? It probably means that you could do it as well. If there's something where you're like, nobody actually seems to be offering this thing, you might be like, yay, I've come across something new and unique. Maybe it's just that people don't want it. Right? So that's something that we want to be aware of as well. Terry sharing, I'll be focusing more on building my digital art and design skills, then making mock-ups. Nice. Monica sharing, not focusing on the small offerings, really sticking out like print on demand. Yep. And as an illustrator, it can take a lot of time. Yeah, that's right. Low barrier to entry for those things. But yeah, it can end up being something that just doesn't work. So you are right, is that it can be easy to do those lower ticket offerings. The problem is that it's not going to be the thing that leads you towards those bigger goals and dreams as well. Have a good read through of all the other things. There's so many more: solving client problems, trying to figure out how to leave my day job. All good things here. We're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for attending. Really look forward to connecting with some more of you via Instagram DMs, or Celeste and I will make sure we message some of you where we can, as well as getting connected through the form that you've filled in here as well. Awesome. This has been a blast. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Kathleen. It's been so delightful running this together as well. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your day.